So good morning, everybody, or good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Heidi Bruins Green. I'd like to welcome all of you to our session called All by Ourselves, the challenges of organizing around bi plus identities. I know it doesn't quite say that on the program, but that's what we've named our session. We just didn't get the change in quite in time. I am really excited to be here. This is actually my 21st summit. I've been attending them since the mid-90s when I was representing Procter & Gamble's brand new ERG Gable. Back in my P&G days, I was a finance manager. Now I do instructional design, and I work for two different companies. One is SweetRush, which is a learning design company, and the other is Diversity Science, which is a public benefit company that focuses on evidence-based diversity and equity and inclusion. Back in 2001 at the summit in Cincinnati, actually, I taught the very first bisexuality session, and it was a round table. Now, back then we had 375 people at the summit. Tells you how wonderfully Out and Equal has grown over the years. But we had over 70 people show up for that roundtable on bisexuality. So there's always been a lot of passion around the topic. Since then, I've taught bi plus topics probably over a dozen sessions. Now, many of the sessions that I've taught, but since 2010, I've gotten to teach with the amazing, articulate, and compelling icon of the Bi Plus community, Robin Oakes, who's sitting here. She is really a joy and an inspiration to work with on anything we get to do. And don't tell her I told you, but today is her birthday. So happy birthday, Robin. Now I will let you take the floor now.
Yes, it is true. It is my birthday today. Hello, everybody. My name is Robin Oakes. I go by she and they pronouns, and I have identified as bisexual for 45 years. Yeah, 45. So I have a lot of experience being bisexual. And in terms of my professional life, I worked at Harvard University for 26 years as an administrator, where I started a faculty and staff employee resource group. And I co-started, well, a number of us started a faculty and staff LGBT resource group. I also now spend my days as a full-time speaker. I travel around the world speaking about identity and sexuality, and my focus is, in fact, on non-binary sexualities, so bisexuality, pansexuality, queer identities. And I love my work, mostly because my work gives me a chance to engage in all sorts of conversations from which I learn. And so I think in some way I travel around, I teach, I learn more, and then I try to wrap that back into my teaching. So I feel extremely fortunate. I feel like I'm always in school. And yes, that's what I do. And I also write. I'm the editor of two anthologies. One is called Getting By: Voices of Bisexuals Around the World. The other one is called Recognize: The Voices of Bisexual Men. And then finally, I edit an ongoing publication called Bi Women Quarterly. And that is a little grassroots publication. And I'm really happy to say that we give that publication away for free. We offer free digital subscriptions to anyone of any gender and any sexual orientation who's interested in reading it. And that honestly brings me a great deal of joy, because I think we need to get as many voices as we can out in the world. I'm going to type into the chat when I'm not speaking the link to sign up for that publication if you're interested. And I will now turn it back to Heidi.
Okay, and so on my screen, I can't actually see that the PowerPoint slide is running. You're doing the PowerPoint slides, Robin?
You are.
Nope, because my screen isn't sharing.
Oh, well, Heidi, why don't you talk for a minute and I'll find the slides.
That would be so awesome. So little did you all know that we were showing amazing slides up till this point. Um, so what I'll do while Robin is figuring out where the slides are is just letting you know what our agenda is for today. So we have an hour for this session. And what we first want to do is talk through some definitions. I think in a lot of workshops, we talk about definitions, but particularly in bi and bi plus workshops, we talk about definitions because a lot of people don't always understand the meanings. And for what you'll find if you go to multiple sessions is you'll find you multiple definitions, but we just give a little bit of context so that you know where we're coming from. Um, After we do some definitions, then we're going to go through a series of polls and chats. What we want to do is we want to hear from you. And so we're going to show you a series of polls that will just ask kind of the status of what's going on in your organizations. And then we'll have chats where we'll ask you some questions about that. So we'll do that. And then after that, we're going to share some tools with you, some things that we find useful to help you get further down the road in terms of that. And then we'll, let's see, what else? Then we'll use just some conversation about kind of what our perspective is about what's going on in the world. There we go.
I'm,
Um,
I'm having trouble getting that little PowerPoint show, PowerPoint mode thing. So I'll try to figure
oh,
that out. But in the meantime, this should be sufficient.
this is where we are.
And I'm going to hide
Okay.
the back of my screen. There you go.
Okay,
There
perfect.
it
Thank
is.
you. Yay. And it's coming
Yes.
up.
Okay.
Awesome. There we go. Okay. So then we're going to do Q&A at the end, and we want to leave as much time for that as possible. And then we'll ask you for your takeaways. Robin and I always come out of these sessions figuring out what are the things we need to do next. And so your input is really valuable to us. So to get started, we're going to talk first. I get to talk again still to share Robin's definition of bisexuality. Many of you have heard this over the years, but I think it's really important to talk about bisexuality in a very human context. Um, and Robin, as one of the foremost experts on bisexuality in the world, she's actually had the opportunity to provide input to Merriam-Webster's dictionary about bisexuality. So it's really good to have somebody who's authoritative to provide this. But here's what Robin says, and I'm going to read it just because I love it. I call myself bisexual because I acknowledge that I have in myself the potential to be attracted romantically and or sexually to people of more than one gender, not necessarily at the same time, in the same way, or to the same degree. Now, what I love about that definition is that it clearly defines bisexuality as non-binary, which is the way I've always felt about it. Some people feel that it's an either or. I'm attracted to men and women. But it's so far beyond that. It's really more an expansive and inclusive definition. When I think of bisexuality itself, I think of I'm attracted to people like me and attracted to people different from me. And Robin says it so much more elegantly than that. So um, I like what this does in terms of challenging people's assumptions. So now Robin is going to define for us bi plus.
So, by the way, when Heidi said that I had the opportunity to add input into Merriam-Webster's definition, that means that I relentlessly tweeted at them and wrote to them and tried to get them to review their definition and update it so that it actually reflected what people who identify as bisexual these days are meaning by that word. And
And
lo
she
and
was
behold, much to my great surprise, they improved their definition substantially. It's still not perfect, but it's a whole lot better. And
Yes.
if you want to know what I'm talking about, you can go to merriam-webster.com and look up the word bisexual yourself after the session, not now. Okay. So terminology, this is the second and last term that we're going to spend time on right now, but just this program is not just about people who use the word bisexual. It is really about all of the various different words that people use to describe the potential to be attracted to people of more than one gender. And there are many different terms. The most common ones perhaps are bisexual, pansexual, queer, also omnisexual, heteroflexible, multisexual. I mean, we could keep on going. I think I know of about 30 different terms. And every single one of those terms is the best word for some people. And different words are the best term for others. And when we are doing this session, we are doing this with the intentionally from a perspective of welcoming. We don't think that bisexual is the best term. It's one of many. And the term bi plus is sometimes used as an umbrella term. But when we use the term bi plus, just remember that the plus is real, that it indicates that there are many other words. And in our belief, none of them is the best single word that everyone should use. Everyone should use the word that is best for them. So just no matter what your label, if you identify with any non-binary sexuality, we see you and we value you and we respect your choice of word. So now Heidi and I are going to actually engage in a little bit of conversation. This is going to be our mini panel. Heidi, do you want to introduce it?
Sure. So the topic of the workshop is, what are the challenges of organizing around bi plus identities, and why do we care? So Robin and I have both been long intrigued about why there seems to be so little movement toward inclusion of bi plus people in the LGBTQ mainstream. Bi plus people are by far the largest population in the LGBTQ. We are at least more than half, if not more than that, when you look at the letters individually. But many monosexual people assume that bi plus folks are covered when, like, gay men or lesbians, issues for them are covered, and the rest of the time we're covered when straight issues are covered. So people a lot of times don't get the message that there actually is, there are unique issues for bi plus people. And I think that surprises us because we've been talking about this for years. As I said, we've had these workshops for a long time. And honestly, part of the issue is us, those of us who are bi plus, because a lot of times we don't step up and say who we are and insist that we be at the table. In the last session I was in, resting bi face, which was awesome. Everyone should watch that recording. There were a number of people in the chat who said that they felt guilty putting their issues out front just because, gee, that's, taking space away from the people who really need it. And I think that's a bit of internalized biphobia that we as a community or as communities really need to take a look at, because there are unique issues and there are health concerns that are greater for bi plus people than for gay men and lesbians. We are more closeted. There are a lot of different things that they bring up in their workshop that I think it's really important to understand that we need to do the work to come out. We need to do the work on ourselves to be willing to be our authentic selves. Anyway, there's a lot more to say, but Robin, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, I think what you said, Heidi, is really important, because one of the perceptions about bisexuality is that, I cannot tell you how many lesbian and gay people I have heard say, oh, well, bisexual people don't experience oppression. Or, well, maybe if you do, so maybe you're half oppressed. Okay, we'll give you that. We'll give you half oppression. But in fact, there's this considerable body of research about this subject. And what it actually shows is that bisexual people appear to experience a tremendous amount of minority stress, meaning stress related to the negative stigma around our identities. And, you know, the minority stress can be measured in two ways. One is in the short term in terms of people's coping behaviors, because when people are under stress, they engage in coping behaviors such as cigarette smoking, alcohol consumption, you know, self-harm, etc. And this is, if you look in every stigmatized community, you will find higher rates of these issues. So you can actually measure minority stress in terms of behaviors. You can also measure minority stress in the long terms, in its long-term impact of stress is that it affects our health. So you can measure it too in terms of health outcomes, diabetes, hypertension, things like that. And what the data is showing is that in fact, bisexual people in some ways have very similar levels of minority stress as lesbians and gay people. And in some ways it's even higher. We have higher rates of suicidality. We have higher rates of intimate partner violence, and some other things. So that's not what this program is really focusing on. So I think that that's part of it, though, is the perception that there is nothing, like there's no problem. There's nothing to see here. Another thing I want to say is that, you know, it's been interesting to me as someone who's been doing bi-activism since long before there was any national attention to the needs of transgender people, and just watching how transgender people, once they mobilize, they got stuff done. Like there are miles of work left to do, but they've been extremely successful as a movement in, you know, moving the ball down the field and getting things to happen. And, you know, so I've kind of watched that and said, wow, that's great. Like, yay, this is exciting and this is really important. But how come bi stuff isn't moving in that same way? Like, how come bi stuff just seem to be sitting and not improving at all? And what I came up with, one thing is that around trans issue, there are a lot of concrete action steps, a lot of measurables, a lot of things you can say, we need this, we need this, we need this, we need this, we need bathrooms, we need, you know, healthcare, we need, you know, surgical coverage, we need hormone coverage in the health plans, we need transition policies and organizations. Like there's the list, you can make a really long list of very specific deliverables, like things you want. And then you think, like, what is the list of deliverables for bi plus folks? Like, what is that? And I think that's where it gets squishy, because in many ways our deliverables and our needs overlap very heavily with those of lesbians and gay people. Like marriage equality sure benefited me because I got married on the first day it was legal in Massachusetts, you know, on May 17th, 2004. So yeah. But I basically put all my energy into Mass Equality, which was our statewide LGBTQ advocacy organization. And in most other people's perception, that was like lesbian and gay work. But it wasn't. It was also work for me as a bisexual person, but that wasn't obvious. So in many ways, our needs overlap. And then in terms of where they don't overlap, I think they're much more intangible. They're much more hard to put your finger on. It's more things like, see us. Notice that we are here. And also, I would say, recognize the value of our presence. Like, notice that we are here and recognize that we actually bring a lot of positive value to the table. And that's harder to quantify. That's harder for people to kind of wrap their brains around. And I think that's been a really big liability in terms of our ability to move the ball across the court, because the ball is much gauzier and softer and much more change how you see things, like change your perception. That's our ask. And that's harder to measure. So I'm going to turn it back to Heidi. Oh no.
Actually, we're going to do a poll.
We're going to do a poll. And the poll, in this poll is back in, you have to go back into the outside tool, into Pathable. And the poll question is, does your BRG, ERG, so employee resource group, business resource group, actively engage in concerns and needs specific to bi plus people? And the answers are yes, frequently, sometimes, once in a great while, never, almost never, and NA, I'm not part of an ERG, BRG. And now I'm going to try to do a sleight of hand and switch to the other screen if I can. Oops.
You can do it.
I know I can do it, I think. I'm gonna have to do some ugly stuff here. So where's the next poll? I will say to everyone while you're filling it out that it's been a challenge for all of us, I think, who are presenting at this conference, learning an entirely new platform.
It's true, and I have noticed actually Pathable works better when you don't have a mass of people doing it probably, but
This is supposed to be the
it's
poll.
it's kind of a cool tool.
This is not the poll. Is it the poll?
Mary Lou, maybe you can help us find the poll.
I clicked on the poll.
Ah, okay.
I said,
There it is.
poll.
Maybe just
All right,
view it
let's
there. Just
here. Yeah, let's just look at it right here.
yeah.
It says, so the pink line is frequently, which is only 3 people. 15 people said sometimes. 15 people said once in a great while. 13 people said never, almost never, and nobody said that they're not a member of an ERG, BRG.
Great.
Okay, Heidi. Oops, where are we going here? I'm sorry. Are we the
Wow.
wrong one? This is a different, hold on.
We went somewhere. Okay, well, you all saw that. Just hold those bars in your mind. And it looked like the biggest amount of answers were in the sometimes and once in a great while category, of where your ERG actively engages in concerns and needs specific to bi people. So what we'd like to do is involve you in this conversation and ask you to put into chat um, uh, either well, actually, for me, it would be better if it's in the Zoom chat because Pathable isn't working on my system. But if you could put in chat a response to what do you think gets in the way of your ERG or BRG focusing on bi plus issues? And we'll take a look at some of those.
I'm extremely sorry, my screen is, I'm gonna stop sharing for a moment.
Okay.
My screen is frozen.
All right, I understand.
This program wasn't even open.
Wow. Okay. They think bi is less impactful. I think that's really true. Let's see. Okay. Right. I think there's a lot of belief that bi people can just fit in and be either gay or lesbian or be straight and not, and so it just doesn't matter as much. It's a lower level of urgency. There's a lot of stigma around it. And there are very few bi plus people who are out. One of the questions we've asked in the past in workshops is how many bi or bi plus people there are in your ERG. And the response we get is, oh, there's a couple, maybe there's one, some cases there's none. And because a lot of times people in the workshops we've been in aren't even out. And so we get this um, lack of good information from for the ERGs to know that we're out there, much less to know that we actually are the majority of LGBTQ people in the workplace. So that gets really challenging. Now I have to say, I actually can no longer see the chat. Robin, I don't know if you can. No, it disappears when your screen comes back up for me. Sorry, folks. There we go. Not knowing how to support bi plus individuals. Yes, and that's someone said not knowing what to do to support bi plus people, and I think part of that is not having the answers for what concrete things can we do. If we can get single occupant bathrooms for trans people, that's an actual thing we can go do. But what is it that bi people need? We need good sexual harassment training that includes examples of by people being harassed and what that harassment looks like. We need to have, back before there was marriage, we used to say that we needed to make sure that domestic partner benefits included both same and different sex couples. There were a lot of different sorts of things like that. So that's kind of those are some of the things that we ran into. So sorry I can't look at all of your questions, but I'm excited to have them because we can save them in chat and we'll use them later. Now what we'd like to do actually is, Robin, do we have any capability to go to the next poll? Because we have another poll that we'd like to ask you to further gather information from you.
Yes.
And what it says is, do you think your ERGs, BRGs, coworkers, managers, in other words, the organization around you, do they have enough understanding about who bi plus people are and what our needs are? So that's in the poll, in the third poll, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing responses there now. And no is the predominant answer. More than half of folks are saying no. And I will have to say that 31% of you saying yes, I find incredibly exciting because, you know, I've done these workshops for years, and the vast majority of the time, the answer has been no. And what this says to me is the impact of, over time, we keep making changes and we keep saying, look, we can get into more of our workplaces. We can educate people, because what that is one by one education. When you talk to the people in your organization and they talk to other people and they talk to other people. So that's the power of that. That's almost a third, which I find to be, you know, just, well, you can see I get really excited about data, but I think that's really powerful. However, the fact that nearly 60% are saying no, that our organizations aren't doing this, and this is after almost 20 years of doing this just at Out and Equal, and I realize Out and Equal isn't all the places that bi education takes place, but in our community at large, you know, you don't see enough positive images of bi people in television. You don't see enough bi images of people coming out, you know, except someone comes out because they're in trouble and doing terrible things.
Yeah.
So I think that stuff really makes a difference. I guess to sum up, I'm thrilled to see change, but I'm not so thrilled to that we still have so far to go. And in service of that, Robin has some stuff she's going to share about making the case for inclusion that I think will be very, very useful to share.
And
So Robin.
I completely agree with Heidi. If you had asked the same, if we had taken the same poll at an Out and Equal summit 10 years ago, I think that there would be very little above very little.
Yeah, there
It
would
would
be
have
no
90%
pink.
very little or worse. So this is good that there is some improvement, but again, it is clear that there's a good amount of work left to be done. So making a case for inclusion, I think one of the challenges sometimes is, like, how do you argue for people to be inclusive in your ERG or at your workplace? I think one of the things that is very compelling is population data. This is actually general social survey data that is a survey that was done annually over a 10-year period. And it asked people, you know, about their sexual orientation identity. If you look at the blue line, which is lesbian and gay, you see that it's in 2008, it's 1.6% of folks who were surveyed say yes, that's how they identify. 10 years later, it's 1.7%. So it increased, you know, a little bit, but basically it's holding stable over a 10-year period. But if you look at the number of people who identify as bi, that's where the numbers get really, really dramatic. What you see is in 2008, it's 1.1%. 10 years later, the number has tripled. So that is 3.3%. And that is huge. So, you know, in 2008, 2/3 of LG, and anyone who's a mathematician, please forgive me for rounding, but 10 years ago, 1/3 of LGB people self-reported identifying as B. Now, by 2018, it's 2/3 of LGB people, you know, according to this study. And so that's one reason. So there are a lot of us. Case number one, we are in very large numbers, and those numbers are growing. And there's other data that shows that amongst younger folks, amongst millennials and younger, the proportion is even more steep. So that trend toward non-binary identities of all kinds, gender identities, sexual orientations, is happening. Case number two, we're already in the room. One of our experiences at Out and Equal in past years is talking to bisexual identified people at the conference who have said that in their ERG, they're not out. If they're in mixed gender relationships, people think that they're showing up as allies. If they're in same gender relationships, people just take for granted or assume that they are identifying as lesbian or gay. So it's my belief, and it's my experience from talking to so many people, that there are already people there. There are a lot of people in the ERGs and the BRGs, and of course in the greater workplace, who identify as bi, but people just don't necessarily realize that they are present. And being more explicitly inclusive will make people more comfortable. It'll just make people feel better. I think it'll make people more likely also to show up to your events and meetings. And case number three is it's good for business. There is a growing body of research that shows that employees of all are more productive when they feel that they can bring their whole selves to work. You know, that's true of all marginalized identities, and it's certainly true of bi plus people. There is actually some bi specific research that shows, you know, that when you don't feel that you can be yourself, you check out. You don't show up 100%. And when you do feel you can be yourself, and that self will be welcomed and valued, that you are going to be a more productive, happier worker. That is great for recruitment. It's great for retention. You know, so it's good all around. And now we're going to do one more poll. And that, Heidi, you're going to do the poll, yes?
Yes, once you put it up. So basically the next poll is in service of that, we want to talk about for the organizations where there are things that the organization is doing to support bi plus people that are focused on bi plus people, we'd like you to just say what activities, well, what does it say specifically? Has your ERG, BRG, or organization put on any bi specific event or activities? So what we're looking for is a yes, a no, and a not sure for that. Oh, look at that. Oh, you know what? I think I read the wrong poll before. I feel bad about that now. Because here's our yes, no, not sure.
This is it, yeah.
Yeah, well, I read that one for the other one. So, oops.
I'm trying to see if it'll show our full screen results.
Okay.
It says it.
Sorry about the
Okay,
technology stuff. Okay, so now we're going back to our 60% no, there haven't been activities. And that's not totally surprising, but the 29% is great. And so what I would like to do is ask you to put into the chat, those of you who have had good activities going on, if you could put that into the chat and tell us what those things are, that would be awesome.
And this is the chat inside of Zoom, please.
Yes, inside of Zoom would be great.
I think I'm going to stop the share for a moment so we can see.
Okay. That'll help. Thank you.
So in terms of things that people are, okay, Bi Awareness Week Spotlight Meeting. We had one storytelling event. At Wells Fargo, we have a Bi Plus Advisory Coalition and have requested that all of our Pride chapters have at least one Bi Plus education event. Celebrated Bi Visibility Day with a series of events. Wow. We celebrated Bi Awareness Week for the first time this year by watching a TED Talk and discussing in breakout rooms. Bi Visibility Day newsletter and related event. Our ERG hosted a panel discussion during Bi Awareness Week. Chapter meeting focused on Bisexuality Week. WF, that is awesome. Wells Fargo, I think that means.
Oh. Pretty sure, yeah.
I'm not gonna, yeah. Over the past couple of years, I've noticed that the conversations are starting and more people I know are coming out as bi. Ours is a sort of like Roxanne's storytelling of coming out included in Coming Out Day. And Yammer posts for Bi Awareness Week. We did a fireside chat on Bi Plus Awareness Week. We did a great Bi-Pan visibility panel that featured employees representing the North America, European, and Asian Pacific regions. WF equals Wells Fargo, LOL. I sat on a panel for Bi Visibility Week, currently compiling coming out stories for NCOD on Sunday, National Coming Out Day on Sunday, by collecting stories from employees, including bisexual individuals in the firm, informational sessions, specifically about Bi Plus, but also including Bi by name and other themed events, such as coming out events, etc. Our BRG is starting a Bi-Pan committee. These are amazing. We've done activations to raise visibility via Pride, the International Day Against Transphobia, Homophobia, Biphobia, and we need to do more. Panel discussion and newsletter bios and self-story. These are great ideas.
Yeah, they really are.
Wrote right after that, these all sound like great events. I agree. We started a speaker series with a different topic at our monthly meetings, and we covered bisexuality last year in September. Myself and another member who identifies as pan created a PowerPoint with definitions, personal experiences, and stats. And then we had a great open conversation about the topic. Bi Awareness Week by newsletter. Bi 101 courses offered as part of a platform of LGBTQ plus education that we offer on regular rotation. Okay, I have to make a confession here. Heidi and I thought that there would be about 3 things. I am so happy to hear that I am wrong. I am so absolutely delighted to learn.
These are all great. This is a great list. People are doing great. I think the Celebrate Bisexuality Day is really getting out there. People are doing the bi visibility thing. Yay!
We are getting better. Yes, we are.
Yes. Okay, so we should probably, what we'll do is keep chatting in this list. I would ask you to keep chatting in the list, and what we will do, I mean, everyone can save the chat at the end of the session, but we'll also compile this list and so that we have it available to folks as ideas for what you can do throughout the year.
Let's put in the session notes. I think we can do that afterward. We can save them and turn them into a document and put them into the session notes so that you can go back and collect them later.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, we will do that. Perfect. Okay, so what we do want to do is talk next about some tools. I want to share with you some tools that we have, and they are actually in the files section of Pathable, so you can pull them down. There are 2. The first one is some bi-specific metrics, and it's something that we've been developing now for a long time. That was first put together by Dr. Lauren Beach, who's done a ton of work on metrics. There are a number of people who are out there doing survey work. I've done one, she's done several. A bunch of people are doing some really impressive work, especially some of the work lately with the Williams Institute and HRC. I think is trying to get something going as well. What this list is there's a list called the Bi Equality Index, and what we've done is it's kind of modeled a bit after the Corporate Equality Index. I don't think there's anything yet in the Corporate Equality Index on bisexuality, but the idea is the same in that what you can do is you can take this list. What it's got is it's got a lot of ways that you can assess your organization, kind of the health of your organization in terms of bi plus support. Things like when you do climate surveys or culture surveys, do you have people identify which letters they associate with in LGBTQ? And if you do gather that data, can you disaggregate it so that you know who's actually in the room? It asks questions about the kinds of events you have, and we can see from that list we just saw that there are lots of different kinds of events to do. There are a number of questions about recognizing the leadership in bi plus people and how you foster that. There are some things you can do about increasing your pipeline. Anyway, what we see um, this particular tool as, it's kind of both an assessment tool and a to-do list. So it can be used in both those ways. So we really recommend you taking a look through it and seeing what is a fit for your organization and how you'd use it. And the other tool Robin is going to talk with you about.
Okay, and by the way, this, when you were writing in the chat the things that your organizations are doing, some of those are things that are on the checklist. So,
I
for
know,
example,
isn't it great?
yeah, it's amazing. And honestly, we're both surprised. That shows that we have actually made some progress. We as a larger bi plus community. One of the things, for example, is when you do any kind of anti-bias training around LGBTQ plus issues, are there bi specific case studies or examples? And that was in, I believe that was one of the things in the chat, was training that included that. So this is wonderful. So the next,
right. One thing, just I saw a note in chat. Someone noted that the URL in chat is, or in the document is different than, I think, than the one here. I think that's what you're saying. There are two different links, and I think they go to a very similar document. The list is the same, but they both should work. So just FYI.
okay. So
I can't pull it out and put anything in chat. Maybe Robin can put it in chat later.
So the other piece is just a few things that you can do that are very specific and personal, and that you can ask your coworkers to do, and your fellow ERG, BRG members. Just generally don't assume that coworkers who are in same gender relationships are straight. When someone shows up in your ERG or BRG and you know that they have a partner of a different gender, don't say, "Oh, how lovely that you're coming here as an ally." So just try to get people not to make that assumption. Don't assume that coworkers in mixed gender relationships are, I got that backward. We got this, right? Don't assume that coworkers in same gender relationships are gay or lesbian. Don't assume that coworkers in mixed gender relationships are straight allies. Interrupt biphobic comments when you hear them. One of the things that has happened to me many times, including in my LGBTQ ERG, is that if someone in the room makes a biphobic comment or a bi erasing comment or just uses language that's not inclusive, what happened way too many times is that everybody in the room, as soon as that was said, would turn and look at me and wait, thinking, "Oh, is Robin gonna say something? Is the bisexual going to say something?" And I strongly believe that that is very, very poor ally behavior. That if you hear something said that's wrong, I really believe that it's up to all of us to speak up. So when we hear something racist, it's not just people of color in the room who need to be speaking up, it's everybody. And it's too much of a heavy load to ask of any people in any kind of group to do all the work by themselves. So if you hear something said that's biphobic or that erases bisexual people, just speak up and try to see if we could get your coworkers in that kind of mindset where they will do it first and not just look at you. Interrupt biphobic comments when you hear them. So again, just in general, like you interrupt them, get other people to interrupt them, make clear that you are supportive, welcoming of bi plus people. I think many bi plus people come from an experience of so much erasure and not being accepted and not being considered full citizens in LGBTQ plus spaces, that if you don't know that somebody is supporting you, it's really easy to feel that this isn't your space, that you're not welcome here, that you don't belong. And so if you want people to feel that they belong, I think it needs to be stated very, very explicitly. So if you are someone who identifies, actually, no matter how you identify, make comments, make periodic comments that make that clear to other people around you. And in the written literature of your ERG, BRG, just try to make sure that that is constantly reinforced. And then the last thing that I wanted to share in this regard is, if you identify as bi plus, come out if you can. If you come out, you will be a beacon to others. As a professional bisexual, as someone who is so publicly bisexual, I have had over the course of my life hundreds of people who have come up to me and said for the first time out loud that they identified as bi. And I know that the first time I ever came out to another person as bi was in response to a coworker coming out to me. She came out to me as bi, and I blurted out, "So am I." And honestly, after 5 years of knowing I was bi, that was the first time I was able to say it out loud. So there's such a power. Coming out is powerful, and you can be a role model, you can be a beacon, you can be a possibility model, you can make it easier for other people who really, really need that kind of affirmation and support. And now, guess what time it is?
It's
Q&A
time
time.
for Q&A. Yay!
I'm going to stop the screen share.
Okay.
And
That
we
sounds
can go
great.
back into the chat function. So if you have any kind of questions or comments, we have
Right.
about 9 minutes. So
That's
please jump in.
great. And just FYI, I'm having trouble also with the link, and I'm not sure why, because it worked yesterday, the link to the metrics document. So I'm not sure what's happening, if that has to do with my entire system is sort of crashed at this point, so it's a little hard to troubleshoot it. I think it's just the bandwidth is somehow sucked dry.
Oh, somebody just posted the tinyurl.com/by/plus/metrics works fine.
Oh, excellent. Okay,
Thank you,
good.
Fiona.
Yes, I appreciate
Okay, so
that.
we have some questions here, and Erin is on the call. Erin is at the meeting.
Yay!
Yay! For those of
Yeah.
you who don't know, Erin is the executive director of Out and Equal, and she's an out and proud bi identified woman. And I will just say from personal experience, when Erin got appointed to this executive director position, it brought many of us a tremendous amount of joy. So we actually do have some real questions here.
Yes.
And they're moving so quickly. What are some visible ways to show we are bi plus allies? And by the way, you all in the chat are welcome to answer that. You have so many comments.
I know, this is great. I love this. It's a great set of questions. I'm dating her. They say, wait, are you pan or bi? I think I may have missed the first part of that question.
I think I know it. It's about the one about being visible. I don't know. There's so many questions. This is hard. Okay, so what are some visible ways to show we are bi plus allies? Let's just pick one and run with it for a minute.
Okay.
Heidi, do you have anything to jump in?
Okay. Here's one that I like. I find it difficult to explain how trans and non-binary individuals fall into this definition of bi plus. Most assume if you're bi, you like cis men and cis women. Trans men are men, trans women are women. But when I say my partner is trans and I think that may be the rest of it. S- So there is a distinct difference between gender identity and sexual orientation. It's true. I think I think what we're talking about has to do with attractions and who you're romantically and sexually attracted to, as Robin's definition discusses. And it is people of, regardless of gender identity, is sort of the way I self-define. So I self-define as bisexual, as pansexual, as queer, and those are the things that fit for me. And a lot of that has to do with trying to help people understand where my attractions are. Now, it's, to me, I could simply say bisexual, and I know I mean people like me and everyone else as well. Um, but sometimes you need extra words to help with that. And I think for me, gender identity is not, it's not where the issue comes up. So, for example, my husband is trans, and and I simply am in love with him. I fall in love with a person with a spirit, not with a, well,
Mhm.
shoulders and eyes too.
Yeah.
It's kind of my thing, but
Now, there's also data that shows that people who identify as trans are actually identify as bi at a high rate.
I've heard
Also
that.
pan. I think there's one study that was the lives of transgender people, and this was not published in that book of the study, but I talked to the researcher and he said that they said that 30% of the respondents had self-identified as bi or pan. So I also
Yes.
think that there's that, but again, it's more than one. It's more than one. And this definition and its non-binariness, this definition of bisexuality doesn't assume anyone's starting identity or the gender identities of the people to whom they're attracted to. Somebody had a really good response to the question of how people can show their allyship. And I'm looking
Okay.
for it. Good ways to show you, thank you, this is from Candace. Good ways to show you are allies. Believe we exist. Believe we exist. It
That's
says exit, but
that's
I
the
think it means
bottom line. That's the
accept our
bottom line.
identities. Accept our identities without debate. Speak
Right.
out against biphobia and bi-erasure. Celebrate bi identities and ask how to support bi plus folks in a way that is meaningful to them. Believe we exist. And I think one of the interesting things too that you can do is like bring up bisexuality in conversations, and it can be little things like, oh, don't I love, Stephanie Beatriz in on that TV show, like in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or I love Sara Ramirez in in ER, like just to kind of mention, you can bring up things through popular culture examples, or I'm so glad that so and so came out as bi, that this person or that person came out recently. Like that was a really exciting thing, wasn't it? And
Right.
just, so it's like you can make your own position very clear through popular culture references, through just like the little things you say.
Right. I always assume everyone is bi until they prove otherwise. There's another question in here too about how do you combat the internal biphobia, or that internal fear that you shouldn't take space away from others in the LGBT community. Um, I am bisexual, but constantly feel that I'm only half gay and thus shouldn't get the space to speak, even though I know that is incorrect. And I think that came up in the last workshop as well. And I think that that's a really important thing to look at, because I do think that's part of the issue that comes up, is we feel like, well, I don't have it so bad as other people. But in fact, as Robin pointed out, bi people actually are at more risk, because I think precisely that internalized biphobia that is reinforced by external biphobia. And so we do need to take space, and we do need to say that our issues matter, and who we are matters, and the fact that we need to be seen matters.
So we have about 2 more minutes before we go to the final activity. So I just wanted to read a few of the comments that are here. The questions are amazing, and I wish we had. Now I wish we had asked for a 5-hour session, although I don't think that was permitted. So Erin wrote, "I just want to tell all of you, even though I am out as bi plus very visibly in this role as CEO, I still struggle with internalized biphobia, and thinking through my history often takes me back to moments of deep pain and feeling like I didn't belong, especially in the queer community. I often remind myself that this is a journey and to be gentle with myself. Amen. Also, reach out to BI+ people for help. One night when I was feeling loneliness and isolated working in the Middle East, I reached out to Heidi. This is our Heidi. And she helped me through a very difficult time. Leverage your relationships in the community. Someone else wrote, I'm married to a trans man as well. I identify as pan. For anyone wondering how to be good bi allies, go watch Resting Bi Face recording.
Yes, it was good.
These are great. Okay, so I think what we're gonna have to do now though is jump to the end. We are going to collect these comments and we're gonna post them in the workshop.
Session notes.
Session notes. We're gonna end with a final poll, which is just simply the question, and we're gonna actually do this in the chat. What are one or two things that you are taking away from this session? So just kind of summary, and Heidi and I will take turns reading them as they pop up as fast as we can.
If Heidi can read them.
Get set, go. I'm not alone.
Okay, I can't see.
Visibility is key. Be visible, be louder and prouder. I need to work in my ERG to have more by specific events education. I am queer enough and I matter. I can't read them fast enough. I am worthy of being who I am. We can do more together than we can on our own. Start a BI+ support group. I am queer enough. Everyone deserves to exist. Tell your story. Fight for representation. Our BRG is seriously lacking when it comes to BI+ education. I still have so much internalized biphobia. Bi identities require their own attention. Borrowing #professional bisexual, making the difference, training, educational, speak up for me and the many others who may not be open and out. Encourage my BRG to do more BI+ education and celebration. No one else can define me. Speak up. I need to fight for trainings to include us, acknowledgement and validation. We're queer, we're here, do not fear. Oh, I like that.
That's good.
I like that rhyme. The BI+ make up the majority of LGBTQ. I will interrupt any biphobic or bi-erasure comments I hear. I am forever a bisexual professional. #. Be a part of the education to be a part of the change.
Nice. These are awesome. Oh, I wish we were all in person to do hugs. We are absolutely stronger together.
So I hope this was helpful to all of you. Again, this was, again, technology-wise, this was a learning curve because we had to learn well, we didn't actually learn it, I guess. We tried to learn an entire new platform, but here we are. And anyway, just thanks to all of you for showing up. And again, keep talking, keep doing this work. Everything you're doing is important and matters.
Absolutely.
And you do belong and you do deserve to be visible, and your visibility will make a difference.
Yes, we will change the world. You already are. So know that.
Yeah, and again, Heidi and I can attest to that because this was not, if we had asked these questions 10 years ago, we would not have had this kind of conversation.
Right, exactly. It was all about fear, and people would face, even at the summit, a lot of biphobic comments from people all over the place. And people would come into our workshop and they would sneak into the workshop because they didn't want their teammates seeing them come in. And people would just ask to remain anonymous and tell us that they couldn't participate in, even when we had a reception for bi people, there were a number of people who told us later that they felt they couldn't come because someone else might come and see them.
And it was in a public space.
Yeah. So
okay. It's 4 o'clock or 1 o'clock,
right.
or something o'clock, depending where you
are. All right, Bonnie is immediately going to start a BI+ committee and plan more BI+ programming. Yes, go Bonnie.
I'm going to put my social media hashtag and my website, if anybody wants to get that from me. And again, I do speaking, so if you want to do any programs at your workplace, I'm not sure if Heidi, if you're doing them right now outside of your regular work job, which is overwhelming, but there's.
Oh, I will always talk to anybody. But Robin's awesome, everybody. And remember, again, it is her birthday, so.
That's right.
All right, thank you everyone for coming. We'll see you at more sessions.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
And we're still here if people do want to stay and
we'll
chat
stay
a little bit.
Until we get kicked off. So
I think we get kicked off after 10 minutes. So
So if anybody wants to type anything into the chat or say hello, a lot of people are saying hello, and thanks for the birthday wishes. So
Yes.
the meeting is formally adjourned, but you're welcome to stay on and chat.
Yeah.
Yay,
Yes.
Jenny.
Fighting for trainings. What's that?
Yay, Jenny, and I'm trying to figure out what yay, Jenny.
I love it. We are stronger together.
Okay, somebody wrote, even last year, so many people spoke up saying, I'm here with my ERG and they don't know if I'm in this session because I'm not out. They don't know I'm in the session because I'm not out, or this is my first time I am saying this out loud. I am bi. And oh my.
Wow. Good for you. Well, I have to tell you that attending sessions on bisexuality can turn you bi. Just saying, it's happened for years.
And then there's another comment that says, the only reason I can be here this year is because it's virtual. My wife wouldn't trust me enough to go in person.
Wow, that's powerful. And I'm now struggling to reconcile the double bias that we experience as bi plus individuals, along with the bi plus privilege some of us experience when in relationship.
Yeah. Saying it out loud is so hard, but so empowering.
It really is. This is great.
So you're welcome just to keep on chatting till they kick us off.
Yes.
Heidi, there's a comment that says, I don't want
Oh,
to.
yes, assuming everyone is bi.
I think that
Okay.
Go ahead and explain what you meant by that.
Sure. It's, well, for me, I actually didn't mean it as funny. I meant that is my assumption. Like everybody, all of us make assumptions about people. And, you know, that's, no one is a blank slate. When you look at people, you don't have a blank slate. I think if people think they don't, they're probably not realizing what's going on.
Was this
Feel
a
nice.
challenge to heteronormativity? The idea that
Yeah.
we live in a culture where everyone is assumed to be heterosexual?
Right.
And saying, what if you flip that? And
Yeah. And so to me, that's the assumption I make is making that assumption. And then if they talk about being straight or talk about being gay or talk about whatever, then I go, oh, okay. And so that to me is something that works.
and
So
but no negative. Thank you. No negative here. And I think it's actually an interesting question though in general, because we've been conditioned to have so many assumptions about people. Like when we meet people, we assume that they're cisgender, we assume that they're heterosexual, we assume that they're Christian, like in the United States at least. We assume all kinds of things. And I think that it's a lot of hard work to unlearn those assumptions. And I almost feel like there are these magnets pulling me into binary thinking. Like, oh, is this person gay or straight? And I always have to, I know those magnets will always be there, pulling me out of complex thinking and into oversimplistic frames. But I think what I try to do is, for example, look and think, am I making a binary assumption here? Am I missing something? Am I seeing things clearly? Like, what assumptions am I making? And I try to do a lot of correction in my own thinking, and it is a lot of work. But I think that if you can do it, the more you do it, the more clearly, obviously, you will see, and the better your perception.
right, exactly.
Yes, when you make an assumption, you make an ass out of you and umption.
Right. I know, I love that one. I forget who first said that, or the first place I heard that. I think that is wonderful.
Aw. Thank you, 54-year-old gay male.
Aw.
Yeah, so on Wednesday, for those of you who are still on the Zoom, I'm going to be doing another session at 3 p.m. with Stacey Kelly on bisexual and pansexual. So it'll be
Cool.
a totally different topic. Well, a little bit of overlap, but mostly 90% different from what we just talked about today. And y'all are welcome to show up. Are there any stats on bi men versus bi women? Yes, one of the interesting things, gender differences, is that when looking at people who identify as men and people who identify as women, that 2/3 of not straight women identify as bi. 1/3 of not straight men identify as bi. And even though the number of not straight men who identify as bi is much smaller, 1/3 is still a really large number of men. So I think that we're present in large numbers in LGBTQ spaces. We just may not be noticed or recognized, or people may not realize that they're looking right at us. I love this. We all make assumptions, so being conscious about what you assume is holding everyone in the light. That's very beautiful. I have always kept the fact that I'm bi to myself, because unless I'm in the company of other bis, because cis men are rude about it and make it like a porn thing, which is really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And Mark,
that's frustrating.
Mark wrote, join my panel on supporting bi men. Oh, that's so great that there is one.
I know, I'm excited. I have that on my list.
I'll try to come. Do you think the difference in gender percentage is affected by our assumption about bisexuality, that it's more a woman thing? I'm not sure. I think it's probably a combination of lots of things. I think there's a lot of cultural, I think men are given much tighter leashes in terms of what they're allowed to, how they're allowed to express themselves. I think that people take male sexuality much more seriously than women's sexuality. So male sexuality, I think for both gay and bi men, is seen as more of a threat to the status quo, because what women do is not taken seriously anyway, which is sexism. But I think there's that. I think there's probably also, and again, I don't know for sure because I'm not a bi man and I've never experienced that, but I do think that men and women do have a different experience of our sexuality. And from conversations, from my interactions with bi men, I think men in general tend to have a different, like a more simple, direct line to their sexuality than women. I don't know. I feel like there's some different, I don't know. And again, I'm overgeneralizing here, but I do think there are some gender differences. I think obviously they're overlapping. The experiences are all overlapping and it's very complicated.
Yeah.
It will kick us out in a minute. Yeah, men are constantly being told what a man is and what masculinity is and what crushes, and that crushes guys don't fit in that mold. So just so y'all know, I'm the editor of the anthology Recognize the Voices of Bisexual Men. I co-edited that anthology with a bi-identified man. And so if anybody's looking for resources about bi men, it's actually a really cool anthology. And one of the things I'm very proud of is that 30% of the men in the anthology identify as men of color and 20% identify as trans or non-binary. So it has a really wide representation and just like tremendous diversity of voices in terms of perspectives and opinions. And yeah, it's a book that, just like reading the essays that came in and the poems that came in, just really taught me a lot.
Yes.
I keep taking my glasses off and putting them back on to read the notes. So again, before they cut us off, just thank you so much for showing up at the session, and especially for staying on and participating in these comments in the chats, because they're really, really interesting.
It's great. I really like it. I like this. There is a ridiculous notion that cisgender men attracted to cisgender men have to be gay, and cisgender women attracted to cisgender women are just sexual performance for men. Downfalls in living in a man-driven patriarchy.
Yep, the intersection of biphobia and sexism.
Yep, exactly. Very cool. Thank you, everyone. Wow.
And I did copy the notes. I'm going to save them again because I copied them a little while ago.
Yeah, I did too.
I've now saved the chat so that we can turn that into a document for the site.
For the site, for the future. That's great. Okay. So, wow, there's still 43 participants on the call and they have not kicked us off yet.
Either you're all in the bathroom or you're having a good time.
Right?
Right here.
I love it.
Oh, I've known since I was 12 that I was bi, but I've never joined a community.
That's very cool.
I'll give you a hug.
Yeah, this is very cool.
Yes, Heidi and I are both professional bisexuals. The first time I ever used that term, I was speaking um, at a university. I think it was Temple University in Philadelphia. And I walked into the student center and there was this enormous banner and it had pictures of me and the other speaker. And under my name, it said Robin Oakes, professional bisexual. And I just stood there and it was huge. It was huge. And I stood there thinking, I wonder what other people are thinking that means.
Right.
And I had this desire. There was a sofa right underneath it. I had this desire to go hide behind the sofa and just try to listen to comments as people pass by. But I didn't.
Right.
It was yeah. But I thought
Right.
that's a good job title. I could do that.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, Mary Lou left, but Mary Lou was awesome. For those of you who are going to be speakers but haven't done it yet, Mary Lou joined our call and helped us with getting on board and all of that. So it was awesome. That was a great idea, Erin, to um, have each person assign their own Sherpa or whatever the right word is, the person who does the heavy lifting for making sure these happen.
There are some great comments here. One thing I really appreciate about the bi community is how accepting we are of asexual people. That's a priority for me, is to always include asexual education and also inclusion in my program. So I love that comment. And then it helped me figure out my identity, that professional bisexual is so different from bisexual professional.
It very definitely is.
Amen to that.
There's
And
also a question about the resting bi face was the name of the workshop. It's in the first session. So if you go to I'm not quite sure how it works, but I imagine if you go to the workshops, the recordings for the session 1, you'll see resting bi face. So you can look that up. It was a session put on by Bank of America and Northwestern Mutual. They did a great job.
yeah, I can't wait to go watch it. So.
I know. It's worth watching. I'm going to watch all of the bi sessions, actually.
So I guess they haven't kicked us off, but I
They
guess
haven't. I'm really surprised. It said that they're supposed to, but
I
our
think
numbers are
today,
dropping.
right? I'm the membership chair for my ERG. We have 248/353 out folks, LGBT and allies. And of the LGBT people, 24 are bi pan. So 21% of out folks are bi pan.
Well, it's good that you've got a good number. That may mean that your numbers will grow in terms of the bi people. One of the things, and Robin, you may be able to speak more to this, but one of the things I've noticed in talking to people in the bi community who are solidly in the bi community and didn't start out in, as lesbian or as gay, um, often feel they have no use for LGBTQ ERGs because they don't speak to their issues. So we've posited that it's perhaps if we build it, they will come kind of an issue, but more than likely there are a lot more bi and pan people out in your world who just don't see your relevance. So you need to be visible as a bi and pan supporting organization, your ERG does, in order for those people to want to come and find you. So
Numbers are
just a thought.
Yeah, these numbers are actually higher than most places. When Heidi and I have done sessions at Equal, one of our sessions, we've actually asked people how many people are in your ERG. Of these, how many, to your knowledge, identify as bi or bi plus? And then of these, how many are in leadership positions in your ERG, BRG? And what most commonly happens is people will say some number between 100 and 3,000 people in their ERG, BRG, whatever the number is. And then of those, the number of people they know identify as bi plus is usually 1 or 2 or 12 or some very tiny number. And then of leadership, it's usually, if it's 1, it's usually the person who's there in the room that day. And
Right.
so these numbers are actually quite
Encouraging.
impressive. But I think there's also the thing to keep in mind, which is that related to what John's writing, is that many people don't show up because they feel that it's not going to be a welcoming space. Like there's a lot of so self-exclusion, you know, because if you don't, again, and this is, I think, part of the reason why the BRGs and ERGs need to, if they want to be inclusive, need to make that really, really clear upfront and in a public facing kind of way. Because if people don't know, people might feel like, oh, this isn't a space for me. I have a neighbor who used to identify as lesbian and then fell in love with a man, and now has identified as bi for the past 25 years. And she hesitates to get involved in any kind of LGBTQ group because she feels that she would be taking up space. She's not sure if, you know, she feels like she doesn't want to intrude. And that breaks my heart because she could bring value. Like, she could bring a lot of value if she were to get involved. And, but I think that
Absolutely.
her experience, while it breaks my heart, I think is very common.
Right.
It can explain some of the ways that we show up in much smaller numbers. It's not necessarily
Right.
that people don't want to come, but because they are unsure of their welcome.
Right. Exactly. Eileen, I don't know how you actually can watch those other sessions. I'm not sure how that works. That what you're proposing, that you can just go to the session page and click on it, that would make so much sense to me. I don't know if that's true. And one of the things I do know, that when you're recording a Zoom call, is that it takes a while for it to process. So it may be that they're not available till the next day or next week or something like that. I would suspect that Out and Eagle has information out there about when those things will be available. So we'll have to look at their website.
From Eileen. Thanks, Eileen.
Yeah.
John, where do you work? If you are willing to share that, because you are impressing us. If he's still on. Okay, so Heidi, I've saved the chat.
Excellent.
And it looks like things are up. The resting by face recording is posted now.
Yay! They are fast.
That's impressive. We are allowed to take up space. Thank you, Morgan.
Yes.
Oh, we won't announce that. Don't worry. Just. Oh, good. And we've another link to resting by face.
That's so good.
I like that, whoever wrote resting by parentheses plus face, because yeah, that's what, I guess it's hard. Sometimes using full language messes up puns.
I know, right?
But it's still really important.
Exactly. Wow. Well, maybe someone's saying that it doesn't take that long to process
video games.
Yeah, which is amazing, because I know when I've recorded Zoom sessions, it's like I get this little processing note, processing for the longest time. Okay, so I'm patient. It's probably 10 minutes and I just see it once and think it takes hours.
And I also want to thank folks who were very patient with all the technical challenges.
Oh my gosh, that was really sad.
And this session, this whole conference is on a platform that I think very few people are familiar with. And it is a really nice exoskeleton. And, you know, because it has that really nice chart and the pictures and but inside it was challenging to try to figure out how do you do polling within that thing, and then having to switch back and forth. It was, and just like what can you do, what can't you do? Can you do word clouds with more than one word? In this, it's no. So we were kind of like, we spent, I think all of the presenters at this conference probably spent a good amount of time trying to figure out how to make it work.
Right. I mean, I think it's actually a good technology, just it would be easier if you used it more regularly and there were some clear responses.
Yeah, and yes, Morgan, if you watch it, it takes longer, that is for sure. Seriously, quantum observation principle and all that sciencey stuff.
I love that.
True about just about everything too. If you stand there and stare at it, it takes forever.
Right? I know, exactly. Exactly. Okay. Well, I've got another meeting I need to go to. I have too much time on my hands. Don't apologize. I thought it was great.
This is
I,
the best part. Like just, and I wish we were actually in a visual format right now because I would love to just sit around and shoot the breeze with all of you and chat and just enjoy your company.
yeah, see, that would be fun.
Yeah.
Maybe next year, if we're still being virtual, we can have the default be meeting format.
Or may we not be virtual in a year.
Schrodinger's cat. Yes, Schrodinger's cat.
Although I do hope that future conferences, future summits incorporate a virtual component.
Mm-hmm.
I think the comment about the person who was able to be here because it was virtual
Right.
is really important. And so I do hope that it becomes more of a hybrid format where some sessions are virtual and some sessions are streamed so that
Right.
they're seen virtually. It would be a really great thing for the future because yeah, geography can be isolating.
Right. I think that could be very cool. I like the idea.
That was a Schrodinger's cat reference. I love that. I've gotten used to breathing and stuff and such. So for now, I'm good with virtual. Yeah, breathing's a high priority for me too. Okay. Shall we, Heidi? I'm going to press leave. Okay, everybody, bye. As my friend Marcia used to say, I know you are and so am I. And I don't know that you all are, but I know that I am and I know some of you are, so.
You're funny. I love that.
Thank
And
you.
many people are. Look at this. I'm just an innocent bisexual. There you go, Morgan.
Not that innocent.
Nice. Thank you all.
Oh my God. I'm assuming that when they post the thing, they're going to get rid of this part. We should ask them about that.
We should. They probably will. Then again, who knows? It'll probably just be whatever can be seen in Pathable. And I don't know that the Zoom chat can be seen in Pathable. The Pathable chat can be, but we didn't actually monitor the Pathable chat, did we?
No, we did not. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Take care and enjoy the conference. Enjoy the summit.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.